Welcome, everyone. Today I have with me executive function coach Fawzya Khosti, and we're going to talk about executive function, what it means, how she helps clients, her clients specifically. And I wanted to start by giving a definition that I found and very well mined of what executive function is. It is a set of cognitive skills needed for self-control and managing behaviors. And it further goes on to say it depends on 3 types of brain function. I saw a couple different definitions about this, but in general, the 3 functions are working memory, mental flexibility, and self-control. And as Fawzya is going to, she and I have talked a lot about this because I'm still trying to wrap my head around executive function and all the things it means and doing a poor job. But Fawzya, does that definition, to me, it doesn't really tell me anything as a person who's trying to, if I was trying to talk to another person, it just sounds like a bunch of words.
Well,
I don't know.
It is just a bunch of words, Eric. First of all, thank you for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate this. It's going to be a lot of fun. If you asked 100 different psychologists to define executive function, you'd probably get 100 different definitions. So the way I look at it is, the things that most of us take for granted on a daily basis, our daily functions, being able to go to work, go to school. Those are the things that our executive function skills help us achieve. And when there's a deficiency, we can't do certain things, like we're not managing our time well, or maybe we're not organizing our thoughts well. So that affects how we write papers, or that might affect how we turn in our homework, or there's so many different areas in executive function, and like I said, it's a big umbrella. So every executive function coach, I think, that I've even encountered remotely has a different perspective on it, has a different view on it. Most of the executive function coaches that work with kids, and that is how the whole topic kind of came about being, is, schools started having executive function into their curriculum, or they started putting it into their curriculum in a way that to help teachers. So they bring in planners. Well, that only helps kids with some kind of time management during school, and it's usually guided by the teacher. So the teacher guides the student so they can plan their homework and the time when they need to accomplish that homework. But that's just one little aspect of it. That doesn't mean that the student is organized when they get home. That doesn't mean that they're planning the rest of their life well. So a lot of executive function coaches that I'm aware of will help students with their time management. Some will help with planning, prioritization, I'm trying to think what else, maybe even memory, depending on what their skill level is. So a psychologist who helps somebody with executive function skills might have a little bit more, a higher level of skills. So maybe they can help them with motivation, which is one of the hardest things to work on when you're trying to help somebody improve their executive function skills. Or social skills, like a therapist could help with social skills. So they're also working on executive function. For me personally, I'm sorry, go ahead.
When you say motivation, you mean the internal motivation or external motivation, or both?
It could be both. Some students just don't have any motivation whatsoever. I have a couple students that even externally, you can't motivate them to do something. I truly believe motivation has to come from within. If you're not motivated intrinsically, you really aren't motivated. You're doing something in exchange for something else.
So it's almost a bribe at that point.
That's my thought. I really truly believe it has to be intrinsic for it to be true motivation. So when I work with students, I work with individuals who've been diagnosed on this autism spectrum, or ADHD, dyslexia, dyscalculia, anxiety. So those are and I work with kids or adults as well, who have been maybe diagnosed with a minor traumatic brain injury. Some have PTSD. So I work with a lot of different diagnoses, whereas most executive function coaches who work with kids don't really look at a diagnosis. They just might come in and just help them organize their time better or manage their calendar better.
Because that'll be put in the IEP, right? It'll be these IEP goals of better time management or better organization skills or ...
Correct. So they're dealing with one aspect of the problem. I tried that when I first started. That was how my business started out. I worked with kids, and I actually went to their homes and I would sit down with them, would go through the calendar, and I'd help them manage their time. And, you know, I would help them figure out what they needed to have at their desk. I would get as detailed as possible. I'm like, okay, you know, make sure you have pencils and paper and a printer and this. And I just had this list of things. And I realized one day that the minute I walked out of the house, they went right back to their old habits. And I thought, okay, that's really not the most effective way for me to work with these clients. And so I started looking at what else I could do. And over the course of some time, I created a checklist. So what I did is I gave out this checklist, and it had like time management, organization, planning, prioritization, task initiation, attention, motivation, problem solving, and social skills. That was my list. And underneath each one of those categories, I had probably another 10 to 20 subcategories.
Wow.
And I had, and they were as, you know, detailed as, can you use a calendar? Do you use a timer? Do you have trouble staying on track, getting up on time, using a clock to monitor yourself so you can stay on track? I mean, it's very detailed. And I
So you're
started
getting like a baseline of their skills?
Exactly. So before I even started working with them, I would have them do this checklist. I would have the student do it, and then I'd have the parent do it. So I get the student's perspective, and then I get the adult's perspective, the caretaker's perspective. And they're not always the same. As I'm sure you know, kids view themselves differently than their parents do. So it was nice to have the two perspectives. And then I would reassess that every 2 to 3 months. And I noticed that, you know, if we worked on certain things, I would start seeing progress in categories, which was fascinating to me.
So to clarify, if you worked on like one item per se, it might have impact on 2 or 3 items or 2 or 3 bigger categories.
Yes.
Like the learning was being transferred.
Yes. So using that information, I thought, okay, I need to start thinking about how I'm using, I started using games. And I use a lot of games in what I do. And I realized that's when I was doing some research, because I'm always doing research. Kids learn a lot of their executive function skills while playing games when they're little, you know, Chutes and Ladders, Monopoly. I mean, we learn how to problem solve. We learn how to wait for our turn. But they all teach these executive function skills at different levels. So as the game becomes more complex and more sophisticated, so does the skill set.
Like going from Candyland, which is just colors, right, to what you had said about Monopoly, which sometimes, or Risk, which can kick my butt sometimes.
Yes. So as that skill set became more challenging, or as the game became more challenging, we started resolving more challenging skill sets. And so I started recommending games at home, and I realized kids don't play games anymore. They go online and they play video games. Kids do not play games. So they don't learn how to manage their time. They don't learn, how to use, how to wait for their turn, how to
manage disappointment.
How to manage disappointment. Yes. So there's so many things, or even the social skills that go with playing a game. And so I started playing games, and as I got better at this job, I started honing in certain games and certain skill sets. So I found certain games really helped with certain types of skill sets. So I use a series of games. And now what I do, so for example, if I get a client who comes into me and they have a diagnosis of autism and let's say anxiety and ADHD, they have three
That's
pretty
common.
major diagnoses, right? I address the anxiety as completely separate. I almost ignore the anxiety at the beginning. You're not going to make it go away until you reduce other things. So you might as well just know it's there and just tuck it away for a few minutes. And so what I do is I improve their processing speed. With ADHD, with kids who have ADHD, their attention's split all over the place. And so I realized they have learning gaps. And a lot of my students are really, really smart. So I thought, okay, these kids have learning gaps. So I'm coming from an educational perspective and a psychology perspective, because that's my background. And so I started thinking, okay, as a teacher, I would teach a child for mastery. You want them to master a skill set before you move on to the next skill set. So what I would do is I would work on improving their processing speed. So as their processing speed started to improve, I would start adding in other games to kind of help them organize their thoughts better. So think about this. If you can think faster and you can organize your thoughts better, you can do a lot of things better. And as a consequence, their memory improved, their problem-solving ability improved, their ability to have social interactions improved, all just by doing those two things. It was like magic. And I also noticed that the younger they are, the quicker they responded. I could see results within weeks for somebody as young as 8 or 9, or even younger, like 7. I could see results very quickly. The older they got, it got a little bit more challenging. It takes a little bit longer for their brain to, do the rewiring. But I had the best compliment by a kid who he's starting his junior year. And he said to me, he goes, Fawzya, when I first started working with you, it was like I had a bucket. And every thought, everything that came to me was dumped into this bucket. And when I was asked to retrieve information, he's like, I had to dig through this bucket. So half the time I couldn't find what I needed. He said, now, after working with you for a couple months, the information comes to me quicker. And it's all nicely filed in my brain. So I can go in, somebody asked me a question, I can go in and retrieve the information and I can give it to them almost instantly.
It's more like a bookshelf with those clear bins.
Yeah.
Where you can just kind of go and pull.
No, yeah, and that was his description.
That's
so
awesome.
Clearly he was able to organize his thoughts very well to tell me that. Right?
And you said a few months. You didn't say years and years.
No. I work with people for 1 to 2 semesters.
That's it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Sometimes I see progress within a few short months. If they're younger, like I said, I see progress very quickly. I give people homework. So I work with them 1 or 2 sessions per week.
Okay.
But I give homework. I can
So
tell
the
you
more they do the homework, the more successful they're going to be.
The kids that do the homework, they definitely make progress. So recently I added mind prints. It's an assessment that will also gauge their executive function skills. So I've been using my checklist for years, but I decided to add mind print because it focuses a lot on education. So it does look at their flexible thinking. It does look at, pretty much all their executive function skills that are needed to be successful in school. So I've given that information out, but I haven't actually started getting data back yet. So I'm really excited to see where that takes me next. So MindPrint's going to be a really, really cool tool to help with school-age kids. I think I can probably even use it for older adults as well. But what I found fascinating about this is the gentleman that was the salesman for MindPrint, he actually told me that I think NASA uses it. Yeah, and then I use another program that it's a flexible thinking program, and it's very similar to another gentleman that I interviewed on my radio show a while back, and he does combat training, or that's what his program's called, combat training. He works for governmental agencies that help fighter pilots and they have to think very quickly. They have to organize their thoughts very quickly. They have to problem solve quickly. Their memory has to be, amazing. So these things combined, I get really good results and I get them quickly. And on top of all of that, I still tuck in the time management and the organization and the planning and prioritization, all that little stuff. So I do 50-minute sessions once or twice a week. And I
Wow.
usually try to do about between 2 and 4 topics each session. And then I give homework.
That's incredible. And if I remember reading your bio correctly, you're also a certified hypnotherapist.
You did read my bio correctly. Yes. So that's where I come back to the anxiety. I use hypnotherapy to reduce anxiety, and I get
Very cool.
tremendous results. So if I can get somebody who has the diagnosis that we talked about earlier, who has autism, anxiety, and ADHD, I improve their processing speed. I help them organize their thoughts better. And then I use the hypnotherapy to help reduce their anxiety even further, because now that they can think faster and they can organize their thoughts better, their anxiety already goes down, but they still have some. And so we use the hypnotherapy to kind of bring it down even lower. They might have social anxiety, they might have anxiety, for other reasons, but whatever it is, we can hone in on that and reduce that as well. And I've used hypnotherapy to help with memory. I get a lot of success with memory. I've worked on individuals who've had PTSD, minor traumatic brain injuries, or even non-specified memory loss. And it's really been helpful to recover memories.
Wow. And you're not trying to take the place of other therapists or
No,
CBT or any of these other,
not even.
that's not your role.
I work very closely with other therapists. So if somebody comes to me and says, I already see a counselor, I will not do hypnotherapy unless I work closely with that therapist and that therapist is aware of my hypnotherapy and specifically what topics we're working on. So if they're going into therapy, and doing EMDR, I'm not going to do hypnotherapy. They conflict. They're basically similar, so I'm not going to do that. Now, I work very closely with other providers. It's really important to me that my client gets everything they need. So if they come to me and I see a need for something else, I'm going to refer them. So if somebody comes to me with eye issues, sometimes eye tracking issues can mimic executive function issues too. So I'll refer them to an eye doctor that specializes in that and at least rule that out. And if they do have eye tracking issues, we take care of that at some point as well. So I'm not an expert on, I pretty much don't think I'm an expert on anything, but I know what I do well enough that I can refer out to the right people when I feel somebody needs a different therapist. And I try to time it out as best as I can.
And to me, that's the biggest piece too, is we were talking before, and it may not have been, I don't remember if it was today or one of our many other conversations about how siloed everybody is and how unwilling they are to give referrals. And that's a drum I've been beating for a long time is, no individual is a single diagnosis or challenge.
Right.
So to get somebody the help they need, you really need a team. I mean, the whole "it takes a village" trope might be a little overplayed, but it doesn't make it any less true. And
no, you're absolutely right.
So then I think about the role you would play and how, yes, as a parent, it can be very overwhelming because now parents play like, well, I need a financial planner. I need an estate planning attorney. I need a therapist. I need a, executive function coach. And when you list it like that, I start cringing because my brain's like, oh my gosh, I'm just bleeding money. But if you looked at it, and I'm saying this for the listeners out there, and this is what I'm trying to do. If I look at it as, okay, the estate planning attorney is going to make sure my kid is good to go if something happens to me. The executive function coach is going to make sure my son is having more success and a better time at school, so I have less school avoidance. I have less meltdowns when they come home because they're not trying to front for so long. And at the end of the day, it's making my life better. So a little bit of short-term pain, I don't know what else to call it. I just think I
Well,
need people to think beyond that. You know what I mean?
yeah, I had a client a few years ago, and I do see clients repeatedly. I'll see them for like a semester or two, and then I might see them again in middle school, and then in high school, and then in college. So they do come back. I think one of my students called it like a reboot or something. Um, but they do come back for short periods of time. And I don't like, I'm always working myself out of a job. So I don't want to keep anybody there. I don't want to be a permanent fixture in anyone's life. So I refer out a lot. And I really think it's important to refer out, because you don't want a student getting used to having somebody in their life forever. I should be a temporary fix. And when they come to me, I tell parents all the time, I said, just think about it. If your child's 10 years old, it took you 5 years to figure out this problem, right? Now we know what the problem is. Give me a year to fix it, or at least bring it up to par, and then go live your life. And then I'll see you again at middle school, and I'll see you again in high school. Just come back so that we can take those same skill sets to the next level. Because we all know that elementary school has a different skill set than middle and high school and college.
And it's no different than you and I. If we're going and we're getting a different job and we move into management, or we move into senior management, or what got us to where we were isn't going to allow us to be successful. I mean, I've seen it all the time where some of the most successful salespeople make the worst managers, but they get promoted because they're so successful. And I equate what you're describing to the same thing. You would want to take that salesperson and teach them the new skills that they're going to, and explain, look, all of this made you a phenomenal salesperson, but it was all meant on you being by yourself, working for yourself with,
Right.
and sell. As a manager or a leader, it's a very different skill set. Let us teach you the
Exactly.
skills you need. And I see you doing the same thing, right? I mean,
Exactly. It's just a different skill set. Yeah. And for me and my clients, is taking that skill set to the next level. I always bring math as the analogy. Like, you have to learn how to count before you can add, before you can subtract, before you can multiply, before you can divide. And then you just keep scaffolding those skill sets, right? Same thing with executive function, because what happens with kids who have executive function challenges is interesting to me, because most people learn them from their parents. But if parents don't have good executive function skills, then there's a deficit in the kids. Or if they have a challenge like ADHD, or they have anxiety, or they have something else, they're not paying attention to those skills. So they're getting parts of the skill. They're not getting the full skill. So like, in time management, for example, they might get to learn how to use that planner, but maybe they don't know how to watch the clock to see if they're on track. So they're missing things. So what they do with me is we just go through them methodically and give them the actual skill sets that they need to move forward. And I work on time management, then I work on our organization, and then we move on to different skill sets. So that's why it takes, up to a year, because, we have to, and for some kids, it takes a little bit longer, because if they really have a lot of deficits, we have to take the time. And sometimes parents get impatient and they want things to be quick. And sometimes they'll leave. And I had a client who came into me a couple of years ago, and she's like, well, they've been here for 4 months already. This should have been resolved. The kids were 10 years old. She had twins and they're 10 years old. And she asked me, what would happen if I took these kids and we stopped doing this? I said, nothing would happen, other than they're going to continue to struggle. It's going to be more difficult for them. Well, they both came back this year, 2 years later, because they're struggling to the point where it's impacting their schoolwork. And these are very smart kids, but you can't wait too long. Otherwise the gap becomes bigger and bigger, and it takes longer to fix.
thank you. Because I can see how that would be. Can people use FSAs to pay for you, like a flexible spending account? Can they use a HSA or insurance? Or
I don't take insurance, but I do take HSA, some HSAs, but people have to check their HSA. Some will work, some will not. And some people actually will pay me cash and then they'll submit it to their insurance and get reimbursement, but it's up to the individual to check on that. And then I also take was it ESA for the autism. I think in Arizona, I'm on the Arizona list for the autism ESA. So I don't know if I'm on any other list, but it's not that difficult to get on it. So, I mean, honestly, if somebody was interested in a different location, we could work that out, I'm sure.
Well, and in Maryland, we have low intensity support services, which is a grant for $2,000. I don't know that would cover everything, but it does cover therapies, and it could be used, it could be applied for some of what you're doing. And I'm sure other states will have similar things. I mean, the bottom line here is look to your state, see what's out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I do see everybody remotely. I do work with the entire family, so I don't just isolate. You know, I want to make sure that the student gets support once we're done working. I want to make sure that the family is well aware of everything that we've worked on. Sometimes when I give homework to improve the student's executive function skills, I ask the parent to play the games with them, and it has a great purpose. It gets that child in, you know, next to their parent. They have spend more time together, and the parent gets to see the skill set improve.
And these games aren't like ridiculously expensive or anything, right?
Not
I mean, they're
even.
all stuff you can find at like a
Yeah.
Walmart or
I'll
something.
give you a simple one. Tower of Hanoi. It looks like a little kid's game. It's the one where it has like the little rings. You think it's a super easy kid. I had parents will call me, why are we using a baby game? I said, that little baby game is the most complex game you could imagine. There's 2 rules and only 2. One, you can't put a bigger piece on top of a smaller piece. And the other rule is you can only move 1 piece at a time. Sounds simple, right? It takes my clients weeks before they can finish a full set.
Wow.
And that's with me guiding them through it. You know, and I like the one that has the multicolors for me, because I can, 1, it's visually more stimulating, and 2, they can see the pieces moving. It's a lot harder when it's, you know, monotone.
Yeah.
And so when they actually use the game, I can walk them through it as well. So I can say, hey, you know, the pink and it's always the pink and the yellow. They like each other, right? So come up with little mnemonics like the pink and the yellow like each other. So any opportunity they can be together, they try to be together. So it kind of helps them remember which steps to take when they're working on it on their own. And so, you know, it's all about helping people and getting them where they need to be so they can move on to the next therapy. You know, maybe they need eye therapy, maybe they need something else. So, because most of the kiddos that come see me, they need multiple things.
Well, and we've talked a lot about children, but your website says you ages 5 to 75, right? So I could see, you know, somebody in their 40s who maybe never been diagnosed with ADHD, but struggles with time management, gets in trouble frequently for being late or turning in projects late, etc. Right? And I could see them coming and trying to get help. Or am I off base?
No, you are not off base. I get people. In fact, half my clientele is adults. You know, if it wasn't, I'd be working part-time because I would only see people after 3, right? So, you know, the other part of my day, I see adults, and I have adults in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. I had a gentleman who was in his 30s a couple of years ago. He had just non-specific memory loss, so we worked on improving his memory. We worked together for about a year. He went on, did his thing, and then I'm actually starting to see his son this month. That's awesome. Because his son has similar executive function challenges. And so sometimes, you know, I don't know if it's hereditary or it's just because they're learning the same things. It's hard to tell, but I do work with families. And so he obviously felt good enough about his experience with me. He's bringing his son back.
And I like the idea of working with families because, you know, when my son was getting a lot of speech and physical and OT, it just, I could tell, you know, subjectively, but it felt like I could tell he was doing better when we were able to engage with him in the therapies, because, you know, I would always ask, okay, what are we working on in school? Because I don't want him not to, I don't want to well, one, I don't want to counteract it by doing the exact opposite at the house, but if we can reinforce it, I feel like it makes it easier for him down the road.
Absolutely. And I like to explain everything that I'm doing. So when I work with somebody, I'm like, okay, this particular game is going to help you improve your processing speed, and we are going to time it. But the only person you are racing against is you. So if you get X amount of time on this game this time, that's the number we beat. Not what Joe over there got, right?
You don't have like a top score list.
No. Although some of them like to be competitive, so I always tell them that they have the top score. Oh, it's definitely you.
Do you record these for your clients, or do you let them record them if they want to record them?
I do not. I don't record them because I don't have that kind of space on my cloud. I don't want to, and two, I don't let clients record it because who's going to go back and watch all these? If they forgot something, I would rather they called me and have me clarify it. So I just, I've had clients ask me to record them, and I didn't want to because I'm like, okay, the amount of space that's going to take on my computer or the cloud is going to be astronomical. And then at some point, I'm going to have to go back through them and delete them.
Right.
That just seems like a lot of work to me. So I said no.
And to your point, I think about the times that I've I've attended sessions, webinars, and they're like free recording, and I have never ever accessed the recording. I just haven't.
The only time I record things is on my radio show when I do a full show. I record that. Obviously, you can go back and listen through it on the podcast, but I also do a video. So if it's on Zoom, I'll put it up on my YouTube channel and people can go back and look through that. And I do notice there's certain topics people will go back and listen to it again, or they'll go out and watch it. And the only reason I do that is because as an educator, I look at the 3 primary learning styles. You got your visual, your kinesthetic, and your auditory. So that right there is your visual, right? There's visual learners that want to see it. You can see me talking.
So let's talk about the other things as we wind down. You have a newsletter, not a newsletter, you have a magazine, Executive Function Quarterly Magazine, right?
That is true. Yeah. So once again, I have the 3 learning styles. I've got the auditory is the radio show.
And what's your radio show called? Focus
on Success on voiceamerica.com. And you can access everything on my website, which is executivefunctioncoachaz.com. And then I have the magazine, which is Executive Function Magazine. That's a quarterly magazine. You can go onto my website, you can subscribe to it. You just have to make sure that when you get the email that tells you you're subscribed, you have to confirm it. Otherwise, it'll get bounced back and you won't get the magazine. But we just did our 3rd issue in July. So we're doing our 4th issue in October 10th, it'll come out. I love it. It's so much fun. I get some fabulous people to write me articles. And we just started off with a graphic design intern who does our ads. And we have an editor. And so it's a lot of fun. And the magazine is completely free. It's international. It's quarterly. So if you want a copy, we actually post the previous copies on the website as well. So you can go and look through the previous ones. They're about 75 pages. And because it's free, we still do it on Canva, but at some point we might start selling some ads and maybe make it look a little bit more professional. But right now it looks good. It's just not, it's not probably as nice as I would like it to be, but it's there. It's moving forward. And then
so anybody listening
part would be my actual coaching. So
anybody listening who has a business and wants to advertise and get in front of everybody, the same audience who, it's targeted towards individuals with executive functioning challenges and people that serve them, right?
Absolutely. And we have about a reach of about 30,000 with if we do any kind of promotion on Voice America, it bumps it up quite a bit. So we have a pretty decent reach. I wouldn't say it's not like Coca-Cola, but we have a reach.
Yeah, so it's another opportunity for people to, and it's targeted. It's not Coca-Cola, to use your example, is trying to reach everybody,
Right.
right? You know, but you're if they're getting the magazine, it's because they have an interest in executive functioning.
Exactly. And we have a really interesting variety of topics. Like I think last quarter we had Lauren North, who wrote an article on style. And everyone's like, well, I don't know if that has to do with executive function. I'm like, it has to do with social skills. It has to do with looking good. Of course it matters. And that's what we're talking about, the umbrella, how wide you can make that umbrella for executive function. Well, you can stretch it. Yes.
But that's
Style
real
does
life
matter.
stuff. It's more than just making sure you have your pencil and your pen and organized on the desk in a fashion for the school. This is real life, making
Right.
sure that you're, unless it's on purpose, you don't have two socks that don't match.
Right.
I
Right.
mean,
Exactly. Although my daughter went through high school without matching socks because we had a dog that would steal all her socks. So that's a, I've actually lived that one. But
oh man, this is so awesome.
it's fascinating to me, and how wonderful our writers have been. Dr. Steve Cohen actually wrote an article on how eye issues can mimic executive function issues. I've had, just so many wonderful articles. You've written an article for us. So, thank you for that. And I think that, the best part is they're all giving of themselves. They're giving these articles to share their knowledge, their expertise. So if somebody really wants to learn, it's a great way to expand their knowledge and learn something new.
I agree, and thank you for the opportunity to write. But I will tell you, you've mentioned this a few times, and I need to do a deeper dive into this about the challenges that can come if you have eye tracking challenges or issues. I need to find somebody that can come on to my podcast and have a conversation with me and not make it. I need it like you did a great job explaining executive function. I need
Right.
it to be explained to me like I'm a 5-year-old.
Well, I think that's what makes it nice is when you have someone that really knows what they're doing, they talk to you and explain it to you in the simplest way possible so that you can actually understand it. When it's not your expertise, it's hard to understand someone else's expertise, right? So when it's not your expertise, you want it explained in a simple way. I know I do. Sometimes I don't feel very smart when I listen to people talk. I'm like, no idea what you just said,
Exactly, and especially when I
But
have, if I'm bringing you onto the podcast to try talking to the audience,
yeah,
I have no idea what, some people out there, they may be other coaches and they'll be like, oh yeah, Fawzya, we can go much deeper. But then there's other people who may have never, like me, who really struggle with the term executive function and what it
right.
means.
Well, I know I talked to Brett Anderson is a colleague of mine in Arizona. He and I have had all kinds of conversations about executive function, and we could sit there and have these nice deep dives into certain things. But I know that's not everyone's interest, so I just try to keep it as simple. It's basically the skill sets that you use every day. Like, we don't have to list them because there's a lot, but clearly you have them, so you don't have to worry about it, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes,
Well, yeah, the only
yes.
time you worry about something is when it's not working, when something's
And
not working.
right, and you don't. A lot of times, you may not know you don't have it until you get called in when you have to put it into play. Which again goes back to what you were saying. Elementary to middle to high. At each of those levels, you're being called upon to use different skills. Like in elementary school, well, when I was in elementary school, I didn't have to change classrooms.
Right.
And I could totally see that somebody who's not having any challenges, and then they go and they're required to change classrooms with 2 minutes to get to your locker in between or whatever, that could be overwhelming. I could see, I could totally see how that would lock somebody up.
Oh yeah. Or even high school. I mean, or college is like the biggest example. Like, a really smart kid can pretty much skate their way through all the way through high school and rely on their memory. They get to college, and I know this because my daughter was one of them. And this happens a lot with gifted kids. They go to college and they realize, because it's now 10 times harder, and all of a sudden they're like, wait a second, I can't commit all of this information to memory. I actually might have to study.
Yeah.
I might have to get organized. I might need a planner. And all of a sudden, life becomes more complex. And I get a lot of kids who've had executive function challenges. Maybe and I have one right now that's extremely smart. He got into Berkeley, and he has a diagnosis of autism. He did not do very well in Berkeley. And now they're addressing his executive function issues with me, but it's not like they ignored it. He went to a specialized school. But there needs to be a check at the end of high school to make sure they're ready. Do they have the maturity? Do they have the social skills? Do they have the time management skills? There has to be some little checklist that happens to see, is this child ready to leave the house and go live on their own?
Well, and I would add to that, Fawzya, that I wish a lot of these jobs would have executive function coaches for how to be a good employee. Mm-hmm. Just, what does it mean to be an employee? And maybe I'm not using the right terminology, but I could totally see where I could have been better. No, I'm not, I don't have a problem with time. I'm not 15 minutes earlier, you're late guy, but there's other things that go into it about just how to be a good coworker, or how to be a good roommate, or things like that.
But I mean, even just the simple improving your processing speed and organizing your thoughts better, that's one that I think could help everybody.
Yeah.
If you can organize your thoughts better, I mean, the world opens up. I'm working with a woman right now who's I think she's 40, and she's in middle management. She just got a promotion. And then she realized when she started the job that her skill sets weren't quite there. So, and we started working together, and she thinks some of the things that I do are silly. And then she sees the results. And then she comes back and says, okay, it worked. Like I did this, and now things are better in this area. And so she's starting to see results. And, I see her whole family, because she doesn't have the executive functioning skills that she needs. Neither do her kids, because who are they going to learn it from?
Well, as we get older, from what I've read, our processing speed it slows down. That's just part of getting older anyway, right?
Well, I personally think that if you keep your mind active, it really shouldn't slow down that much. I think the reason, I personally believe that the brain slows down because we slow down.
Like everything else, if you don't work out, if you don't, if you spend all day in bed, you're going to be tired all the time.
Yeah, I saw a picture of this woman. She had to be like, I don't know, 80s, 90s. I kid you not. She was on a gymnast pole, like doing something that I've never been able to do in my entire life. And I was in awe of this woman. And I thought, the same thing goes for the brain. If you keep your brain active, barring any unforeseen brain injuries or disease, why can't you stay sharp?
Well, I'm right there with you. I like reading and playing games and stuff. I'm actually trying to teach myself Spanish now using Duolingo. So
nice. Well, another little tip that I have for a lot of people when they call and they can't afford me, I refer them to Lumosity. It's an app.
Okay.
It's a free app. It does amazing things for your executive function skills. And there's a paid version as well, which is a little bit, more challenging, but you don't have to have the paid version. You can just use the free version and still benefit.
And are your prices on your website, or do they call and you'll say this is what it'll be based on how many sessions we're going to have? And
I don't base it on the number of sessions. What I do is I just tell people I work with them one semester or two.
Okay.
So if we get to the end of the semester and I don't feel we're at a good stopping point, then we move on to one more semester with kids.
Okay.
With adults, it's more of when I see the results I need to see, then I start reducing the number of sessions. With somebody who's really, really complex and has like a lot of challenges like autism, ADHD, anxiety, dyslexia, or something like that, then I would say twice a week to start off with. After 2-3 months, we reevaluate. Depending on the person, we might go to once a week, or we might stay on twice a week for another 3 months. Every 2 to 3 months, I reevaluate the skill sets and see where we're at. If it's somebody who's has more complex issues, I might wait a little bit longer. I might wait 3 months just to kind of get enough time in there so we can see some results. And then, we go from there. Right now, I charge $300 for an intake evaluation, and I'm offering a free mind print assessment if somebody comes and signs up with me. Once they've paid for that intake evaluation, they get their mind print assessment as well. And then I charge $125 per 50-minute session and $125 for progress monitoring, which is for 4 weeks of progress monitoring. And so when I was talking earlier about working with the family, that's usually so parents can give me weekly updates. They can send me texts, they can call me, they can interact with me. We can, work things out so I can customize what I'm doing with the students. So there's a couple students that I don't do progress monitoring on, and they're like the adults, like they just don't need it. Like they're on top of things. But for most of the kids, we do progress monitoring. But I'll tell you, I know my prices are very low.
Yep.
And I keep them low. I've been keeping them low so that I can help as many people as possible. But I'll probably be raising my prices come January.
Okay. Yeah, you're not, I would say you're not even competitive right now.
Oh, I know 2 years ago, there was another woman who charged $175 in Arizona. I don't even come near that. So
again, this is an investment in yourself or your child, right? I mean, I'd like to look at it like that.
I genuinely do things to help people. I try to give as much as I can, like I said, I've got the radio show, I've got the magazine, I've got the coaching. I mean, if you really genuinely want help, there's really no reason why you can't get it. It's free. I mean, most of the stuff I give you is free.
Yeah, a lot of the reason why experts like us exist, it's not because the information isn't there. It's because you need somebody to help you distill it and execute it.
Right.
Yeah,
and some of it is, our expertise. Like I have expertise that somebody else might not have.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I mean, I'd like to think I do. I don't know.
I mean, you've got a lot of letters after your name. You've got an education. You're a doctorate.
Letters.
You're almost a doctor in education, right? Or
yeah.
have you finished your dissertation?
I took the exam for the doctoral program. I took the exam. I was in my dissertation process. I was 6 months from graduating, and I had a series of events that put me in a position where I had to stop school. And I had the opportunity to go back, and I made the decision not to because I already had the job. And it was never really important for me to be called doctor. I don't care. I have the knowledge. I have the experience. I don't need the degree.
You've done everything except for defending your dissertation, right?
Everything but defending the dissertation.
Which is, holy crap, you've done a lot.
Yes.
No,
and I can hold my own in any room with a bunch of other PhDs. So I think I'm good.
This has been awesome, Fawzya. Was there anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask you? Anything you want to make sure we definitely cover? I'm going to have links to all your social media and everything on the show notes.
I would love to promote the mind print assessment. If anybody would like that free assessment, if they would, they just, if they're interested in working with me, it is a free assessment. So that might be kind of fun. And for any of your listeners, I'll give them an additional $50 off the intake evaluation. So for your listeners, it'll be $250 to come in and do the mind print and the evaluation. And if they did the mind print assessment anywhere else, it would be $199. So
it's awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much, Fawzya.
Yeah, thanks. It's always a joy talking to you, Eric. We have a good time chatting about all these fun topic. So thank you for having me on.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and also if anybody wants to get a hold of me, can I just give them my information? You can go to executivefunctioncoachaz.com and you can contact me on there through the contact tab at the very bottom, or you can call me directly at 480-648-1122.
And for time zone purposes, so people aren't calling you like 4 o'clock in the morning?
Well, my phone is set up so I only get calls between 9 and 5. So you can call me anytime you want. If I'm not available, it'll go to voicemail. I return all emails, all voicemail, all text messages within 24 hours. If you do not hear from me, I did not get it.
Okay, perfect. I'm always leery when people give out their phone number because.
Now, I am one of those people that I actually answer my own phone unless I'm with a client. I answer every call. I return every call the same day. I'm probably the easiest person on the planet to get a hold of.
Certainly easier than me.
Yeah, no, Phil, if you even have questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Just give me a call.
Awesome. Thank you, Fawzya.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me on.